Maria Thompson had always been the kind of woman who preferred doing things herself. She wasn't one to rely on others, even when life threw challenges her way. Living alone in a modest, suburban home that she'd poured her heart into for over 2 decades, Maria found comfort in the familiarity of her surroundings. Every corner of the house held memories, her children's laughter echoing through the living room, family dinners around the kitchen table, and quiet nights spent reading by the fireplace. But now, with both kids grown and gone, the house felt different. Quieter, lonelier. It was early autumn, and the air carried a crispness that hinted at winter's approach. The leaves outside were beginning their annual transformation, painting the neighborhood in shades of gold and red. Inside Maria's cozy kitchen, however, there was no beauty to be found. Instead, an incessant dripping sound disrupted the calm atmosphere. It came from underneath the sink, a leak that refused to stop despite Maria's attempts to fix it. She knelt on the tiled floor, flashlight in hand, examining the tangled mess of pipes beneath the cabinet. Her hands were smudged with grease, and her patience was wearing thin. "This shouldn't be this hard," she muttered under her breath, trying to tighten a stubborn nut with a wrench. But every turn seemed to make the situation worse. Water pooled on the floor, soaking into the hem of her jeans. Frustrated, she sat back on her heels and sighed. "I'm too old for this," she said aloud, though no one was there to hear her. After a moment of staring at the chaos before her, she reached for her phone. Practicality won out over pride. If there was one thing Maria valued, it was solving problems efficiently. And right now, the problem required professional help. She scrolled through a list of local plumbers saved on her phone, finally settling on a name she vaguely recognized: Elijah Johnson Plumbing Services. The reviews were glowing. Words like reliable, honest, and hard-working caught her eye. Hoping for the best, she dialed the number and scheduled an appointment for the following morning. The next day arrived with gray skies and a drizzle that matched Maria's mood. By 10 a.m., she was pacing near the window, waiting for the plumber to show up. Punctuality mattered to her. It was a sign of respect, something she appreciated in people. When a white van pulled into her driveway exactly on time, she felt a small sense of relief. Elijah stepped out of the vehicle, his tall frame moving with purpose. He wore work boots caked with mud and a navy blue uniform that bore the marks of countless jobs. His dark skin glistened slightly from the rain, and his expression was calm yet alert. As he approached the front door, Maria opened it before he could knock. "Good morning," he greeted her with a polite smile. "I'm Elijah. You must be Mrs. Thompson?" "Yes, that's me," Maria replied, stepping aside to let him in. "Thank you for coming. The sink is leaking pretty badly." "No problem," Elijah said, nodding. "Let's take a look." He followed her to the kitchen, where the dripping noise persisted. Without hesitation, he crouched down and began inspecting the area beneath the sink. Maria watched as he moved with practiced ease, his hands deftly navigating the maze of pipes and fittings. There was something reassuring about the way he worked, focused, methodical, and confident. "You've got quite the mess here," he remarked after a few minutes, glancing up at her. "Looks like the sealant has worn out and one of these joints might need replacing. Nothing major, though." "That's good to hear," Maria said, leaning against the counter. "I was starting to think I'd have to replace the whole sink." Elijah chuckled softly. "Nah, we'll get it sorted. Just give me a bit of time." As he continued working, Maria decided to strike up a conversation. Silence made her uneasy, especially with strangers. "So, how long have you been doing this kind of work?" she asked casually. "About 15 years now," Elijah replied, his tone friendly. "Started apprenticing when I was 18. Learned everything the hard way, but I wouldn't trade it for anything." "That's impressive," Maria said, genuinely impressed. "It takes dedication to stick with something like that." "It does," Elijah agreed. "But it's rewarding, you know? Fixing things, making people's lives easier. It gives me a sense of purpose." Maria nodded thoughtfully. She liked that answer. Purpose was something she understood well. For years, her purpose had been raising her children and keeping the household running smoothly. Now, without those responsibilities, she sometimes struggled to find meaning in her daily routine. "What about you?" Elijah asked, breaking her train of thought. "Do you live here alone?" "For a while now," Maria admitted. "My kids are grown and off doing their own thing. It's just me in this old house." "That must be nice in some ways," Elijah said. "Peace and quiet, right?" "It has its moments," Maria said with a wistful smile. "But it gets lonely sometimes. You start missing the noise, the chaos." Elijah paused in his work, looking up at her with a thoughtful expression. "I can imagine. My grandma says the same thing. She raised 6 kids, and now that they're all gone, she misses having them around." Maria laughed softly. "Grandmas always know what they're talking about." "They do," Elijah agreed, returning to his task. "Speaking of which, my grandma taught me everything I know about fixing leaks. She used to say, if you don't learn how to patch things up, you'll never survive in this world." "That's smart advice," Maria said. "Your grandma sounds like a wise woman." "She is," Elijah said warmly. "I owe her a lot." Their conversation flowed easily after that, touching on topics ranging from weather patterns to favorite foods. Maria found herself enjoying Elijah's company more than she expected. He had a calming presence, and his stories about growing up in a tough neighborhood intrigued her. Despite their differences in age and background, there was a natural connection between them, an unspoken understanding that transcended superficial barriers. By the time Elijah finished repairing the sink, the kitchen was silent once again, save for the hum of the refrigerator. He stood up, brushing dirt off his hands, and gave Maria a satisfied grin. "All done," he announced. "Shouldn't give you any trouble now." "Thank you so much," Maria said sincerely. "You have no idea how much I appreciate this." "Just doing my job," Elijah replied modestly. "But hey, if you ever need anything else, don't hesitate to call." Maria smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time in weeks, the house didn't feel quite so empty. As Elijah packed up his tools, Maria couldn't help but feel a lingering sense of gratitude, not just for the repair work, but for the brief connection they had shared. She wasn't used to having someone around who listened so attentively or spoke with such authenticity. In her quiet life, moments like this were rare, and she found herself reluctant to let them slip away. "You know," Maria began hesitantly as Elijah zipped up his toolbox, "I don't get many visitors these days. It's nice to have someone to talk to." Elijah paused, looking at her with an expression that was both curious and kind. "I can imagine it gets lonely," he said softly, "but you seem like the kind of person who knows how to handle it." Maria chuckled lightly, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Handle it? Maybe. Enjoy it? Not so much." There was a beat of silence between them, during which Elijah seemed to consider his next words carefully. "Well, if you ever need someone to chat with while fixing another leak, or even if there isn't one, I'm happy to oblige," he offered with a warm smile. His words caught Maria off guard, not because they were inappropriate, but because they carried a sincerity that touched her deeply. For a moment she felt seen, not as a middle-aged widow living alone, but as a human being capable of friendship and laughter. It was a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. "Thank you," she said finally, her voice softer than before. "That means more than you probably realize." Elijah nodded, shouldering his toolbox. "Take care, Mrs. Thompson, and don't worry about the sink. It'll hold up just fine." With that, he turned to leave, stepping out into the cool autumn air. Maria watched him go, standing by the door until his van disappeared down the street. As she closed the door behind her, she leaned against it, lost in thought. Something about Elijah's presence had stirred emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Feelings of longing, curiosity, and maybe even hope. Later, that evening, as Maria prepared dinner for one, her mind kept drifting back to their conversation. She replayed snippets of what Elijah had said, the way he talked about his grandmother, his determination to rise above his circumstances, and the genuine warmth in his tone when he spoke to her. There was something magnetic about him, something that went beyond his skill as a plumber. He radiated a quiet strength, the kind that came from overcoming adversity without losing sight of kindness. But it wasn't just admiration Maria felt. It was also vulnerability. Being alone for so long had made her guarded, hesitant to open up to others. Yet, in Elijah's company, she had found herself speaking freely, sharing parts of her story she rarely told anyone. It scared her a little, how easily she had let her guard down, but it also excited her. Was it possible to form a real connection with someone so different from her? The question lingered in her mind as she sat at the kitchen table, picking at her food. The house was silent. Again, the absence of Elijah's presence almost palpable. She realized then how much she missed having someone to talk to, someone who didn't judge her or expect anything in return. Loneliness wasn't just about being physically alone. It was about craving understanding and companionship. The next morning, as Maria sipped her coffee on the porch, she decided to act on an impulse she'd been suppressing. She picked up her phone and scrolled through her recent calls until she found Elijah's number. Her thumb hovered over the call button for a few seconds before she set the phone down, unsure if reaching out would be appropriate. After all, he was just a plumber, a young man with his own life and responsibilities. What could he possibly gain from spending more time with someone like her? Still, the idea refused to leave her mind. By mid-afternoon, she convinced herself to send a simple text instead. "Hi, Elijah. I hope your day is going well. Just wanted to thank you again for fixing the sink. If you're ever in the area, I'd love to offer you a cup of coffee as a token of appreciation." She hit send before second-guessing herself, then waited anxiously for a response. Minutes passed, each one stretching longer than the last. Finally, her phone buzzed with a reply. "Thanks, Mrs. Thompson. That's very kind of you. I'll definitely stop by if I'm nearby." Relief washed over Maria, followed by a flicker of excitement. While it wasn't a promise, it was enough to keep her spirits high for the rest of the week. She began imagining what their next meeting might look like, what they would talk about, whether they would laugh together again. The anticipation gave her something to look forward to, a small light in the monotony of her days. When Elijah did show up 3 days later, it wasn't because he needed to fix anything. Instead, he knocked on her door holding a brown paper bag filled with freshly baked cookies. "My grandma made these," he explained with a sheepish grin. "She insisted I bring some over to say thank you for the coffee invite." Maria laughed, gesturing for him to come inside. "Your grandma sounds amazing. Tell her I said thank you, and that these smell incredible." They settled into the living room, where Maria served coffee and slices of lemon cake she had baked. Earlier that day, the atmosphere was relaxed, almost familial as they dove into deeper conversations than before. Elijah opened up about his struggles growing up, how he often felt like an outsider in school and later in the workforce. He spoke candidly about the racism he encountered and the sacrifices he made to provide for his family. Listening to him, Maria felt a mix of admiration and heartache. She had never faced the same challenges, but she understood what it meant to fight for a better life. "You've done remarkable things, Elijah," she said earnestly. "Most people wouldn't have the courage to keep going after facing half of what you've been through." He shrugged modestly, though she could see a hint of pride in his eyes. "It's not always easy, but I try to focus on the positives. Like today, for example. Meeting someone like you makes me believe there's still good in the world." Maria blushed slightly at the compliment, unsure how to respond. She took a sip of her coffee to hide her discomfort, then changed the subject. "Tell me more about your family. Do you have siblings?" "I have 2 sisters," Elijah replied, launching into stories about their childhood antics and how close-knit they remained despite their busy lives. He described his nieces and nephews with such affection that Maria couldn't help but smile. It reminded her of her own children when they were younger, full of energy and mischief. As the afternoon wore on, their conversation shifted to lighter topics. They discovered shared interests in music, books, and cooking, exchanging recommendations and laughing over funny anecdotes. Time seemed to fly by, and before either of them realized it, the sun had begun to set. Before leaving, Elijah paused at the doorway and turned to Maria. "I really enjoyed today," he said sincerely. We should do this again sometime. So, should I? Maria replied, her heart swelling with warmth. Thank you for coming by, Elijah. You've brightened my week. As he drove away, Maria stood on the porch watching the taillights of his van fade into the distance. For the first time in years, she didn't feel weighed down by loneliness. Instead, she felt hopeful that new connections could bloom, even in unexpected places, and that life still held surprises worth embracing. The days following Elijah's visit passed quickly for Maria, yet they felt different somehow. The house no longer seemed as empty or as quiet as it once had. Every creak of the floorboards or rustle of leaves outside reminded her of their conversation, replaying in her mind like a favorite song. She found herself smiling more often, even humming tunes she hadn't thought about in years. It wasn't just the memory of his presence that lingered. It was the way he made her feel seen and heard, something she hadn't realized she'd been craving. Still, doubts began creeping in as the initial excitement faded. Had she overstepped by inviting him back? Was she being too forward, too eager? These questions gnawed at her, especially late at night when the silence pressed heavily against her thoughts. She worried that her actions might have come across as inappropriate or desperate. After all, Elijah was younger, not just in age but in life stage, and likely had little time or interest in forming a friendship with someone like her. To distract herself, Maria threw herself into small projects around the house. She rearranged furniture, sorted through old photo albums, and even attempted to bake bread, though the results were less than perfect. Each task kept her hands busy, but her mind kept drifting back to Elijah. What did he think of her? Did he regret accepting her invitation? Or worse, did he pity her? Meanwhile, Elijah was dealing with his own mix of emotions. On the drive home after their second meeting, he couldn't stop thinking about Maria. There was something about her that intrigued him. Her resilience, her warmth, and the vulnerability she occasionally let slip through her carefully composed exterior. He admired how open she was about her loneliness, a topic many people avoided discussing altogether. But there was also a part of him that felt conflicted. He knew their age difference could raise eyebrows, not just from others, but within himself. Was it okay to form a friendship with someone so much older? Would people misunderstand their connection? Elijah wrestled with these questions silently, unsure whether he should continue seeing Maria or step back to avoid potential complications. That evening, as he sat on his couch scrolling through social media, he decided to call his grandmother. She always had a way of cutting through his confusion with wisdom that only came from decades of living. "Hey, Grandma," he said when she answered. "Got a minute?" "For you?" "Always," she replied warmly. "What's on your mind, boy?" Elijah hesitated before speaking. "I met someone recently, a woman I've been helping with some plumbing work. She's different, really nice, smart, funny. But she's older, maybe in her late 50s or early 60s. His grandmother chuckled softly. "And you're wondering if it's okay to be friends with her?" "Yeah," Elijah admitted. "I mean, we've only hung out twice, but I enjoy talking to her. She's got this way of making you feel like you matter, you know? But I can't help wondering if people will judge us or think I'm taking advantage of her somehow." There was a pause on the other end of the line before his grandmother responded. "Let me tell you something, Elijah. Life is too short to worry about what other people think. If this woman makes you happy and vice versa, then why fight it? Age is just a number. It doesn't define who we are or who we connect with." "But what if it gets complicated?" Elijah asked. "What if she expects more than I can give, or if I accidentally hurt her feelings?" "Honesty is key," his grandmother said firmly. "If you're both clear about where you stand and respect each other's boundaries, there's no reason why this can't work. Just treat her like you would anyone else, with kindness, patience, and understanding." Elijah nodded, even though she couldn't see him. Her words resonated deeply, easing some of the tension he'd been carrying. "Thanks, Grandma. You always know what to say." "That's what I'm here for," she said with a laugh. "Now go ahead and keep being the good man I raised you to be." Armed with his grandmother's advice, Elijah decided to approach his budding friendship with Maria with an open heart. A few days later, he texted her, "Hey, Mrs. Thompson, hope you're doing well. I'll be in your area tomorrow afternoon. Mind if I stop by for another cup of coffee?" Maria's phone buzzed while she was watering her plants on the porch. When she saw the message, her face lit up with a smile. Relief washed over her. She hadn't scared him off after all. Quickly, she typed back, "Of course, I'll have fresh cookies ready." True to his word, Elijah arrived the next afternoon, this time carrying a potted plant wrapped in brown paper. "Thought you might like this," he said sheepishly as he handed it to her. "It's a peace lily. Easy to take care of, and it brightens up any room." Maria accepted the gift with delight. "You didn't have to do this, Elijah, but thank you. It's beautiful." They settled into their usual spot in the living room, where sunlight streamed through the windows, casting golden patterns on the carpet. Over coffee and cookies, their conversation flowed effortlessly. This time, however, they delved into topics neither had broached before: dreams they still hoped to achieve, fears they carried, and lessons they'd learned along the way. Maria shared stories about her late husband, a man whose humor and kindness had shaped much of her life. She spoke of the challenges they faced raising 2 children on a modest income, and the joy they found in simple pleasures like picnics and road trips. Elijah listened intently, asking thoughtful questions that showed he genuinely cared. In turn, Elijah opened up about his aspirations beyond plumbing. He dreamed of starting his own business someday, one that combined his love for craftsmanship with community service. He wanted to mentor young people from disadvantaged backgrounds, teaching them skills that could change their lives. Hearing him talk, Maria felt a surge of pride, not because she had any claim to his success, but because she recognized the determination in his voice. He reminded her of her own children when they were young, full of ambition and hope. As the hours slipped by, neither of them noticed the time until the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Reluctantly, Elijah stood to leave, thanking Maria for another wonderful afternoon. "Thank you," Maria said sincerely. "I haven't laughed or talked this much in ages. You've given me something I didn't realize I needed." Elijah smiled, his expression softening. "Same here, Mrs. Thompson, same here." Back at home that night, Elijah reflected on their growing bond. His initial reservations had faded, replaced by a sense of gratitude for having someone like Maria in his life. She challenged him to think differently, to embrace vulnerability, and to appreciate the beauty in intergenerational connections. In return, he offered her companionship, laughter, and a reminder that she was never truly alone. For Maria, the change was equally profound. Elijah's visits brought color back into her world, filling the void left by her children's absence. Their friendship proved that meaningful relationships weren't bound by age or circumstance. They were built on mutual respect, trust, and a willingness to share pieces of oneself. Neither of them knew where this newfound connection would lead, but for now that uncertainty didn't matter. What mattered was the present, the moments they shared, the laughter they exchanged, and the comfort they provided each other. And in those moments they found solace, joy, and a renewed belief in the power of human connection. As the weeks turned into months, Maria and Elijah's friendship continued to grow in ways neither of them had anticipated. What began as a casual acquaintance sparked by a plumbing repair had blossomed into something deeper, a bond that transcended age, background, and societal expectations. Their meetings became more frequent, though never routine. Each visit brought new conversations, shared laughter, and moments of quiet reflection that left both of them feeling enriched. Elijah often found himself looking forward to his time with Maria, whether it was stopping by after a job or scheduling a weekend afternoon just to catch up. Their interactions carried a warmth that was hard to replicate elsewhere. For him, Maria represented stability, a grounding presence in a world that often felt chaotic and uncertain. Her stories of resilience, love, and loss offered lessons he couldn't learn from books or mentors. And while he didn't always agree, With her perspectives, he respected the wisdom she brought to their discussions. Maria, too, cherished these moments. Elijah's visits added a rhythm to her otherwise solitary days. She started preparing for them without realizing it, tidying up the house, baking treats, or picking fresh flowers from her garden to brighten the living room. It wasn't about impressing him. It was about creating an environment where they could both feel comfortable and at ease. With each conversation, she discovered layers of his personality she hadn't noticed before. Beneath his calm exterior lay a sharp wit, a curious mind, and a deep sense of empathy. Their dynamic was unique, blending elements of mentorship, camaraderie, and mutual support. Sometimes, they acted like teacher and student, with Maria sharing tips on gardening or cooking, and Elijah teaching her basic home repairs. Other times, they were equals, debating everything from politics to classic literature, challenging each other to think critically and see things from different angles. But most importantly, they were friends, people who genuinely cared about one another's well-being. One crisp Saturday morning, Elijah arrived at Maria's house with a surprise, a small wooden toolbox. "I made this for you," he said, placing it on the kitchen counter. The box was simple yet sturdy, crafted with care and precision. Inside, he had included a hammer, screwdriver, pliers, and a few other essentials. Maria stared at it in disbelief, her eyes widening. "You made this for me?" "Yeah," Elijah replied, scratching the back of his neck nervously. "I figured it might come in handy if something breaks again. Plus, I thought it'd be fun to teach you how to use some of the tools." Her face softened into a grateful smile. "This is incredible. Thank you so much, Elijah. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he said with a grin. "Just promise me you'll actually use it instead of calling me every time a faucet drips." They spent the rest of the day going over the basics of tool usage, with Elijah patiently guiding her through each step. Maria, eager to learn, soaked up every word he said, asking questions and practicing until she felt confident enough to handle minor tasks on her own. By the end of the session, she proudly fixed a loose cabinet hinge under his watchful eye. "I did it," she exclaimed, clapping her hands together. "Look at me becoming a handy woman." Elijah laughed, shaking his head. "See? Told you you could do it. Maybe next time we'll tackle painting a wall or fixing a light fixture." The pride in Maria's expression was unmistakable. For years, she had relied on others to take care of household repairs, feeling helpless when problems arose. Now, thanks to Elijah's encouragement, she was reclaiming a sense of independence she hadn't realized she missed. Beyond practical skills, their friendship also provided emotional support during challenging times. One evening, Elijah showed up unannounced, visibly upset. Maria immediately sensed something was wrong and invited him inside. Over cups of tea, he confided in her about a recent setback at work. A client had accused him of overcharging for a service, and despite evidence proving otherwise, the accusation had spread online, damaging his reputation. "It's not fair," he said, frustration evident in his voice. "I've worked so hard to build trust with my customers, and now this one person is trying to ruin everything." Maria listened quietly, letting him vent his frustrations before responding. "I understand how you feel," she said gently. "When your husband passed away, there were people who questioned whether I could manage the house and finances on my own. It hurt, but I learned that you can't control what others think. What matters is staying true to yourself and doing the right thing." Her words resonated with Elijah, offering a perspective he hadn't considered. "You're right," he admitted. "I can't let this define me. All I can do is keep showing up and proving them wrong." "That's the spirit," Maria said, patting his hand reassuringly. "And remember, you're not alone in this. If anyone tries to bring you down, they'll have to deal with me first." Elijah chuckled, his mood lifting slightly. "Good to know I've got backup." In return, Maria leaned on Elijah during her own struggles. When her daughter called to announce she wouldn't be visiting for Christmas due to work commitments, Maria tried to hide her disappointment, but Elijah noticed. Sensing her sadness, he suggested they spend part of the holiday together, Not as family, but as friends. We could make it a tradition, he proposed. Watch cheesy holiday movies, eat way too much food, and pretend we're in one of those. Hallmark specials, Maria laughed, touched by his thoughtfulness. That sounds perfect, she said. Though I should warn you, I cry during every single one of those movies. Well, then I'll make sure we have plenty of tissues, Elijah teased. Deal? Deal, Maria agreed, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. On Christmas Day they gathered in Maria's cozy living room, surrounded by twinkling lights and the scent of freshly baked cookies. They watched movie after movie, laughing at the predictable plots and cheering for the inevitable happy endings. For a few hours, neither of them thought about loneliness or regret. Instead, they focused on the joy of simply being present with someone who understood them. Their friendship wasn't without its challenges, of course. There were moments when societal norms threatened to creep in, making them question whether their connection was appropriate. Friends and acquaintances occasionally raised eyebrows, whispering behind closed doors about the nature of their relationship. Some assumed ulterior motives, while others dismissed it as a passing phase. But Maria and Elijah refused to let external opinions dictate their bond. They addressed any concerns head-on, ensuring they were both comfortable with the boundaries they set. Their priority was maintaining honesty and respect, qualities that had defined their friendship from the start. Over time, even the skeptics began to see the authenticity of their connection. Neighbors who once judged Maria for spending so much time with a younger man started noticing how much happier she seemed. Clients of Elijah's who initially questioned his intentions grew to appreciate the kindness and maturity he demonstrated in all aspects of his life. Through it all, Maria and Elijah remained steadfast in their commitment to each other. Their friendship proved that age was nothing more than a number. It didn't determine compatibility, understanding, or the ability to form meaningful relationships. What mattered most was the effort they put into nurturing their bond, choosing compassion over judgment and connection over isolation. By spring, their lives had subtly shifted. Maria no longer dreaded waking up to empty mornings. Instead, she looked forward to weekends filled with shared activities and heartfelt conversations. Elijah, too, found solace in knowing he had someone who believed in him, someone who celebrated his victories and stood by him during tough times. Neither of them could predict what the future held, but for now, they were content. Together, they had built a bridge across generations, proving that friendship knows no bounds, and in doing so, they reminded themselves, and those around them, that human connection has the power to heal, inspire, and transform lives in ways no one expects. As the seasons changed from spring to summer, Maria and Elijah's friendship continued to evolve, becoming a cornerstone of both their lives. What had started as an accidental meeting over a leaky sink had grown into something neither of them could have predicted, a genuine, heartfelt connection that enriched their days in ways they hadn't thought possible. They weren't just friends anymore. They were companions, confidants, and sources of strength for each other. One sunny afternoon, Elijah arrived at Maria's house with a picnic basket in hand. "I figured we should take advantage of this weather," he said with a grin. "Let's have lunch outside today." Maria raised an eyebrow playfully. "Are you saying my kitchen isn't good enough for you anymore?" Elijah laughed, shaking his head. "No way. Your kitchen is perfect. But your backyard? It's practically begging us to enjoy it." The two of them carried blankets, cushions, and the picnic basket out to the shaded area beneath a sprawling oak tree. Elijah had prepared sandwiches, fruit salad, and lemonade, simple yet delicious treats that made Maria smile. As they settled onto the blanket, she couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come since their first awkward encounter. "You know," Maria said, sipping her lemonade, "when I called you about fixing my sink, I never imagined we'd end up having picnics together." "Me neither," Elijah admitted. "But I'm glad we did. Life's funny like that. It throws people into your path when you least expect it." They spent the afternoon talking, laughing, and reminiscing about their journey so far. Maria shared stories about her grandchildren, whom she adored but rarely saw due to distance. Elijah told her about his latest project, a community workshop where he taught teenagers basic plumbing skills. He lit up while describing their enthusiasm and determination, and Maria beamed with pride, knowing how much effort he put into helping others. For the first time in years, Maria felt truly alive. The loneliness that once weighed her down had lifted, replaced by a sense of purpose and belonging. She realized that her friendship with Elijah wasn't just filling a void, it was teaching her new ways to connect with the world around her. Whether it was learning to use tools or embracing vulnerability, she was growing in ways she hadn't anticipated. As summer gave way to fall, Maria and Elijah decided to celebrate their unique bond by doing something special. One crisp October morning, they drove to a nearby park known for its vibrant autumn foliage. Armed with cameras, snacks, and warm jackets, they spent the day exploring trails, taking photos, and soaking in the beauty of nature. "This place reminds me of when I was a kid," Elijah said as they strolled along a winding path lined with golden leaves. "My grandma used to bring me here every year. We'd collect acorns and skip rocks in the pond." Maria smiled, imagining a younger Elijah running through the woods with his grandmother. "She sounds like an incredible woman. You remind me of her sometimes, the way you care about people and go out of your way to help them." "That's high praise," Elijah replied, touched by her words. "Coming from you, it means a lot." Later that evening, as they sat on a bench overlooking the pond, Maria turned to Elijah with a thoughtful expression. "You've changed my life, you know that. Before you came into it, I felt stuck, like I was just waiting for time to pass, but now I feel like there's still so much to look forward to." Elijah looked at her, his eyes softening. "You've changed mine too, Maria. You've shown me that relationships aren't defined by age or circumstances. They're about trust, kindness, and being there for each other. I don't think I'll ever forget that." Their conversation lingered in the air, filled with gratitude and mutual respect. Neither of them needed to say more. In that moment, surrounded by the colors of fall and the quiet serenity of the park, they understood the depth of what they had built together. Back home, Maria began noticing subtle changes in herself. She was more outgoing, less hesitant to reach out to old friends or try new things. With Elijah's encouragement, she joined a local book club and even volunteered at a community garden. These activities brought fresh energy into her life, reminding her that growth doesn't stop at any particular age. Elijah, too, experienced shifts in his perspective. Spending time with Maria had taught him the value of slowing down and appreciating the present. While he remained ambitious about his career and personal goals, he also learned to prioritize moments of connection and reflection. His grandmother often teased him, saying he seemed more grounded these days, and Elijah knew exactly why. Despite their busy schedules, they always found time for each other. Sometimes it was a quick phone call during lunch breaks. Other times it was a weekend outing or a quiet evening at Maria's house. Their friendship became a safe haven, a space where they could be themselves without fear of judgment or misunderstanding. By winter, their bond had deepened even further. On a snowy December afternoon, Elijah knocked on Maria's door carrying a small Christmas tree. "Figured we should keep our tradition going," he said with a wink. "What do you say? Shall we decorate it together?" Maria laughed, ushering him inside. "You're turning me into quite the holiday enthusiast, you know that?" "Well, someone has to," Elijah joked, setting the tree up in the corner of the living room. Together, they strung lights, hung ornaments, and placed candles around the base. The scent of pine mingled with the aroma of hot cocoa, creating an atmosphere of warmth and cheer. As they stood back to admire their handiwork, Maria felt a lump rise in her throat. "I can't thank you enough, Elijah, for everything. You've given me so much more than I ever expected." Elijah wrapped an arm around her shoulders, giving her a gentle squeeze. "And you've done the same for me, Maria. This friendship, it's one of the best things that's ever happened to me." They sat by the fire that night, watching the snow fall through the window. There was no need for grand declarations or dramatic gestures. Their connection spoke for itself, a testament to the power of empathy, patience, and open hearts. Looking back, Maria and Elijah realized how rare their friendship truly was. In a world quick to label and categorize, they had defied expectations and proven that meaningful connections transcend boundaries. Age, background, and societal norms didn't matter when two people chose to see each other as equals, offering support and understanding without reservation. Their story wasn't one of romance or drama. It was simpler and more profound. It was about finding joy in unexpected places, discovering strength in vulnerability, and building a bond rooted in authenticity. Through laughter, tears, and countless cups of coffee, they had created something beautiful, a friendship that reminded them both of the goodness in humanity. And as the years went on, they knew their paths would continue to intertwine, bringing light and warmth to each other's lives. After all, true friendships aren't bound by time. They endure, grow, and inspire, leaving indelible marks on the hearts of those lucky enough to experience them.